CV system is all about the heart, blood, and where the blood is travelling to and why. It's constantly working regardless of what you're doing, and a more efficient CV system helps to ensure a good level of health. The CV system will have to work harder when exercising, as it needs to do everything that it normally does but at a faster rate. The heart is a muscle, and so the more a person trains and works their heart, the stronger the heart will get, and the more efficient the CV system will become, making tasks easier to do. There are 6 functions of the CV system: nutrients delivery, waste product removal, the transport of oxygen, clotting, protection from infections, and thermoregulation. It is important that our muscles receive nutrients in order for them to have the necessary energy needed for them to function fully. Nutrients such as glucose, which is used for energy, is transported to the working muscles through the blood, which is guided to its destination by a network of blood vessels. In the same way, waste products such as heat, carbon dioxide, and lactic acid are diffused into the blood from the muscles, which is then transported to various organs to be processed and removed from the body. Similarly, oxygen is transported through the body to the working muscles and tissues by attaching to the hemoglobin of the red blood cells. For example, Mo Farah, an endurance runner, will rely on his CV system being as effective as possible to enable him to keep going for as long as possible. He needs a sufficient supply of nutrients to be delivered to his muscles so that he can keep on going, and he'll also need a large and consistent supply of oxygen being delivered to his muscles, whilst making sure that waste products are being removed, as too much lactic acid will cause his muscles to cramp up, and failure to remove CO2 will damage his organs. The CV system also aids in the clotting process. When an injury occurs whereby a blood vessel is broken, platelets within the blood are directed to the damaged site, where they then aid in clotting the blood to enable the vessels to heal efficiently and avoid any further damage. For example, if Mo were to fall in a race and cut himself, platelets within the body would be directed to the site of injury, where they would help to repair the area and clot the blood. If this didn't happen, then Mo would essentially just bleed to death. The white blood cells within the blood are used for fighting infections and protecting the body from encountering similar infections in the future. A top athlete will want to be as healthy as possible in order to allow them to train and compete as much as possible, and so white blood cells are very important, as they will fight off any infections and potentially prevent future infections from affecting the body in the future. Thermoregulation is the regulation of temperature within the body by directing the blood around the body using vasoconstriction and vasodilation. For example, when running, if Mo's body gets hot, then the blood at the core of the body gets heated up, where it is then directed to the skin's surface by blood vessels vasoconstricting and vasodilating to guide it there. It can then diffuse the heat out of the body through the skin. Similarly, if his body is cold, then blood that may be releasing heat through the skin is directed to stay more central within the body in order to eliminate the opportunity for it to be released through the skin. There are 2 circulations of blood occurring at the same time. One is the pulmonary system and one is the systemic circulation. The pulmonary system is focused on the lungs. The slightly more deoxygenated blood leaves the heart through the pulmonary artery to the lungs, where its oxygen levels are replenished by oxygen diffusing through the capillary beds at the lungs. It then travels back down the pulmonary vein to the heart. In the systemic circulation, oxygenated blood leaves the heart through the aorta, where it branches off into smaller arterioles until it reaches the muscles, where it diffuses oxygen through the capillary bed to the working muscles and tissues and picks up waste products. It then returns the blood to the heart, passing through smaller venules before passing through the vena cava and reaching the heart. The heart is a dual pump, meaning that one side of the heart works to pump the blood in one direction, to the lungs, and the other side works to pump blood in the other direction, to the rest of the body and working muscles. The heart wall has 3 layers. The outer layer is the epicardium, the middle layer is the pericardium, and the endocardium is the inner layer. The pericardium is a double-layered sac that protects the heart whilst it moves and contracts. The outer layer of the double sac is called the parietal pericardium, and the inner layer of the sac is called the visceral pericardium. The 2 layers create a pericardial cavity which is filled with fluid to cushion the heart. The heart has 2 sides, the left and right. Within the 2 sides are a bottom and top chamber, the top chamber being the atrium and the bottom being the ventricles. Separating the atria and ventricles are the atrioventricular valves, also known as the bicuspid and tricuspid valves. These are used in order to prevent the backflow of blood from the ventricles to the atrium during a contraction. The atrioventricular valves are attached to chordae tendineae, which attach the papillary muscles. When the papillary muscles within the heart contract, it pulls the chordae tendineae down, which in turn pulls on the atrioventricular valves, and that in partnership with the increased blood pressure within the atrium causes the valve to open. The chordae tensionae then prevents the valves from closing too far and once again opening in the opposite direction. There are then two more valves, both located in the arteries leaving the heart, the aortic valve and the pulmonary valve. Ventricular contractions cause blood to be pushed up through the heart and through the aorta and pulmonary artery. The increased pressure of the blood being forced upwards within the heart causes the aortic and pulmonary arteries to open and allow the blood through. The cardiac cycle refers to the heart contracting and relaxing through the process of systole and diastole within the atrium ventricular chambers, which pumps blood around the body. The process of the heart contracting and relaxing and pumping blood around the body is what we commonly identify as the heartbeat. The conduction system is all about the electrical impulses sent through the heart in order to create a contraction and alter the heart rate. There are 5 key components of the conduction system: the sinoatrial node, the atrioventricular node, bundle of His, bundle branches, and Purkinje fibers. Impulses are sent from the SA node, which spread through the atrium and down to the AV node. This aids in pushing the blood down from the atrium to the ventricles. The impulse then travels down the septum through the bundle of His, where it then separates into 2 bundle branches, allowing the impulse to travel to the left and right sides of the heart. The impulse then relies at the Purkinje fibers at the bottom of the ventricles. The Purkinje fibers then direct the impulse in an upwards direction from the bottom of the heart in order to direct the blood up and through the arteries leaving the heart. To begin with, blood fills the top 2 atrium chambers. The left fills with oxygenated blood that's just travelled from the lungs, whilst the right fills with deoxygenated blood that has just arrived from the rest of the body. The first phase is atrial diastole, which takes around 0.5 seconds, as there is currently no contraction and the conduction system has not yet been involved. As the volume of blood within the atrium increases, it causes the bicuspid valve on the left and the tricuspid valve on the right to be forced open. From this, about 70% of the blood from the atrium will passively fill the ventricles. This means that there is still no contraction within the heart, and so this process is called ventricular diastole. In order for the remaining 30% of blood within the atrium to move into the ventricles, a contraction within the atrium needs to occur. In order for this to happen, an impulse is sent from the SA node and spreads through the atriums, pushing the remaining blood through the atrioventricular valves and into the ventricles by active filling. This is called atrial systole and takes around 0.3 seconds. The atrioventricular valves then close in order to prevent any backflow of the blood back into the atrium. The impulse then travels down the septum through the bundle of His before being directed into the left and right side of the heart through the left and right bundle branches. It then reaches the Purkinje fibers at the base of the heart, which directs the impulse up through the ventricle, going from the bottom of the heart to the top, which pushes the blood in an upwards direction towards the aortic and pulmonary valve. The increased pressure of the blood being pushed by the impulse causes the valves to open, allowing the blood to flow through the aorta and pulmonary artery to deliver the oxygenated blood to the muscles and the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. This process is called ventricular systole and takes around 0.3 seconds. All of these things happen in one heartbeat, which takes around 0.8 seconds in total. The autonomic nervous system is a nervous system that controls things such as breathing and our internal systems like digestion. We don't have to consciously think about it. Similarly, the ANS also controls the CV system, controlling the rate at which the SA node emits impulses and therefore dictates the heart rate. The ANS is influenced by the demands placed on the body and the changes the body goes through. It receives information and makes a decision accordingly, whether that be that the SA releases impulses at a faster or slower rate to alter the heart rate. The cardiac control center is located in the medulla oblongata within the brain. The cardiac control center is constantly receiving the information regarding the current state of the body is in and the demands being put on it. Therefore, when a person starts exercising before any change in the heart rate has occurred, information will be sent to the cardiac control center telling it that the oxygen levels within the muscles have decreased and that carbon dioxide, lactic acid and temperature levels have increased. From this, the cardiac control center will make a decision to speed up the heart rate in order to counteract these changes. When speeding up the heart rate, the cardiac control center will send a signal down a sympathetic nerve, in this case the accelerator nerve, where it will then reach a synapse where the neurotransmitter something is released and sent across the SA node and will cause the SA node to release impulses through the heart at a faster rate, causing the heart rate to increase. Similarly, when a person begins to slow down after exercise, the cardiac control center will be aware of this and so want to slow the heart rate back down to a resting heart rate. In order to do this, an impulse is sent down the vagus nerve, a parasympathetic nerve, until it reaches the synapse where the neurotransmitter ACH is released until it reaches the SA node and causes the SA node to slow down the rate at which it emits impulses, which causes the heart rate to slow down. Alternatively, the hormone adrenaline can also cause the heart rate to speed up. Adrenaline is released from the adrenal glands above the kidneys and is then transported through the blood to the heart, where it causes the rate of impulse from the SA node to increase and therefore increases the heart rate. Blood is responsible for transporting things such as oxygen, nutrients and hormones around the body to the working muscles and organs, and the blood vessels are responsible for directing the blood to get to these places. There are 4 different components to blood: red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets and plasma. Plasma is the main component of blood, making up around 55% of the blood's volume. The plasma itself is made up of 90% water, 8% protein, and the final 2% being things such as hormones, electrolytes and nutrients. Because plasma is primarily made of water, when a person becomes dehydrated, the blood will become thicker or viscous, which means that the heart has to work harder in order to move the blood around the body. White blood cells and platelets make up less than 1% of the blood. The role of white blood cells is to fight infections and repair cells within the body. The lifespan of a white blood cell is only a few hours. The platelets, on the other hand, have a lifespan of around 7 to 9 days and are used to help clot the blood and limit blood loss. Red blood cells make up around 45% of the blood's total volume, and their lifespan is around 120 days. Red blood cells contain proteins such as hemoglobin, which is key for oxygen transportations. In particular, endurance athletes will want to try and increase their levels of red blood cells, as this in turn will increase their blood's oxygen carrying capacity and enable them to keep going for a longer period of time and not be affected by fatigue quite as much. The structure of a red blood cell is quite specific. It has a concave shape, which means that the cell has a larger surface area, and because of this, the red blood cell can carry more oxygen and has more room for diffusion to occur. The hormone EPO is responsible for the production of red blood cells. Some athletes will even go to the extreme of using a synthetic EPO in order to increase the amount of red blood cells their body is producing. However, this is a form of blood doping and illegal within competitive sport. If the blood contains more than 45% of red blood cells, it's called polycythemia, and if they have less, then it's called anemia. There are 5 different blood vessels, each structured differently in order to fill a different role. The role of an artery is to direct blood away from the heart at a high pressure, meaning the blood will be travelling at high velocity with a high force. Because of this, artery walls have a thick elastic muscle layer so that the artery can expand and recoil as the blood surges through. The wall of veins consists of 3 layers of tissue that are thinner and less elastic than arteries. This is okay as the blood flowing through the veins is doing so at a low pressure. The lumen of the vein is the largest of all the blood vessels. This is because large volumes of blood need to travel through the vein towards the heart at a low pressure. Within the veins are valves. These are used to prevent the backflow of blood in the reverse. This is called venous return. Arterioles are controlled by the sympathetic nervous system and attach larger arteries to capillaries. They are used to direct blood by vasoconstriction and vasodilation. They are able to do this because of the smooth muscle within them that enables them to constrict and therefore reduce the amount of blood able to go through the vessel and adding resistance. This will also increase a person's blood pressure and vice versa. Arterioles also don't have a tunica external layer. Surrounding the arterioles are precapillary sphincters, which are wrapped around the arterioles and constrict in order to aid in directing the blood. Venules are the connecting link between capillaries and larger veins. Lots of venules come together to form a vein. They are smaller than veins but larger than capillaries and work by draining blood from the capillaries to then return it to the heart. They are extremely porous so that fluid and blood can move easily from the bloodstream through their walls. The capillaries are the smallest of the vessels. Its walls are only 1 cell thick, which allows diffusion of gas and salts between the blood and organs. Capillaries don't have a tunica external layer. Capillary beds surround organs with arterioles, supplying them with blood, and venules draining them of blood. The flow of blood and blood pressure of the capillaries is much lower in order to create a larger window of opportunity for diffusion to occur. Although capillaries are very small on their own, when lots of capillaries come together to form a capillary bed, it increases its overall surface area, which means that there is a larger surface area to allow diffusion.